Curious if this guy from Las Vegas is going to make a liar of me, but I just wonder what he's going to say. So another safe screen name here today. We're talking to Vegas Human. Hello, human. Fellow Vegas. Hello, fellow human.
Hello, how are you?
Good,
Hi.
thank you.
Very good. I was actually going to call myself Vegas Humanist, but...
So it was just how they wrote it.
But I do happen to be human. Anyway,
okay.
I just want to briefly share my own journey from belief to non-belief.
I mean, maybe make it real brief. I'd rather get to the question if we can.
Okay. I came up as a Catholic, believing, and when I started to get into college and was exposed to other ideas, secular ideas, atheist ideas, I became very troubled by that. But through the struggle, it took me about 35 to 40 years to completely shed my belief. However, what seems to bother me about the new atheists and atheists in general nowadays is that I think we should be more gentle when we approach.
You called on the right day.
We should be more gentle when we approach those who are still struggling with their beliefs, because a lot of times I think we come off condescending or insensitive, and I don't think that's going to help move them along the way to what I really think is important, and that is the political, the separation of church and state, which I think in the U.S. right now we are, experiencing a lot of bad political movements and decisions. I think we need to kind of focus more on making sure that people understand that this is not a Christian nation. It was never founded on those principles. And, basically my question is, what do you gentlemen think about, maybe helping people to understand religion more or less in its anthropological and literary context as an approach to kind of weaning them off of religion?
I'm for it.
I'm totally for it. But before I give you my answer to that question, Vegas Human, I have two questions for you. Are you single, and are you a homosexual? Because I'm in love with you right now. Like, seriously.
Oh.
I love that question.
We're matchmaking.
I think it's so important to think about how we engage with people who are religious and what we can do to foster a common concern, which should be everybody's concern, regardless of their religious faith, for secular values, and particularly the value of secularism itself. Secularism protects religious freedom. It protects the freedom of everybody to believe what we choose, including religious people. And one of the big challenges that we face in the United States over the past few decades has been this increasing association of secularism with atheism, such that people kind of assume that to support a secular government, a system in which people can be free from religious interference in their lives and in their laws, you have to also be an atheist. And that has really made it very difficult to build the coalitions we need to support secularism. But the one thing I will say that I think is important is I actually don't think this is primarily the fault of mean atheists. I don't think that's why this has happened. I think that conservative religious activists have done a very good job of convincing the American public that to be a patriotic American, you have to be religious, and that it's really them who've been pushing this narrative, and that firebrand, angry atheists make a kind of good scapegoat for them to kind of say, look how mean they are, they don't like us religious people. And sometimes it may come across that way. But I actually think that it is more the organized religious right to blame than people like Russell.
Right. If I can, well, wait, I just want to add to that real quick, my point of view as a person with with sort of a technological background, which is that
he's saying he's an android.
Beep, boop. There is an element to the way that we interact with each other that has a lot to do with the society that we live in and the way that we relate to people through technology, because we all absorb information about the world in very particular ways. And one of the things that the internet has made it possible to do is that no matter how obscure or weird your personal opinions may be, you can always find a group of people who are sympathetic to you and are willing to argue very loudly and passionately about that you personally are right and that nothing you think needs to change. And people tend to cluster in these little groups where they can be reinforced all the time. And I know for myself that this is comfortable and familiar and feels good, but it also has the effect of polarizing people and getting them into the mindset that I would not encourage on from the point of view of this show, which is basically that I'm super right and super rational. There's an argument supporting everything I think, and if you disagree with me, you're an idiot and a jackass, and there's no reason for me to change my mind. And I don't think that's the fault of any one person or group of people. I think it is an emergent property of the circumstances that we find ourselves in the 21st century.
Right. I mean, this isn't something that, it's something I've been thinking about for a while, because sometimes, when you listen to Richard Dawkins, all these people that I admire, that we all admire, they can kind of come off, a little chilling to someone, especially someone who might be hearing them for the first time. Mm-hmm. I don't know if either of you caught Bill Maher Friday night, but Sarah Silverman.
I haven't watched Bill Maher in a while, actually.
Me too.
I used to.
Sarah Silverman was on, and she articulated it very well. It was like her new show about how she goes into areas in the deep South and confronts people with kindness and kind of finds some common ground with them, and finds that they're not as hostile as some of the folks that you see at these Trump rallies and that kind of stuff. And also, real quick, there's a lot of atheists, Richard Carrier and folks like that do a lot of research and try to, put forward the idea that Jesus Christ never existed. There's no historical record. And, his work seems to be pretty good. But, for me, when people say, well, there were so many folks around in those days, like Mithra, Apollo, whoever were supposedly born of virgins, were going to die and come back.
If I can cut to the chase on that, I think that trying to convince people that there was no historic person named Jesus is almost beside the point. I'm not going to get into the level of credibility among historians that Richard Carrier's point of view has, but I will say that people who are deeply ingrained in religious questions and we had 2 callers today who believed that the Earth was only a few thousand years old.
I was surprised by that.
I was too, actually. A lot of times our callers are more sophisticated than that, but
I did not
some
say
shade. But for people like that, if you do talk to them, you have to deal with a whole lot of other issues before you even need to bother with the question of whether Jesus was a real person. And I personally don't care all that much if there is someone in history that Jesus was loosely based on. I don't think he rose from the dead or turned water into wine or all the other things he was supposed to do. So whether or not that guy existed, he certainly wasn't anything like the guy in the Bible.
So I tend to agree with that.
What I'm getting at is when folks come to me and say, well, if you don't believe in God or you're not a Christian or, they start talking about Jesus, I say, well, I don't get into the specifics about, anthropology or literary redaction or anything like that. But what I try to say to them is, as far as I think what you should really focus on from that story is, the talking against hypocrisy, about forgiveness, about social justice.
Right.
I think that's what you should be focused on. You shouldn't be focused on the authoritarian, how to live your life, any prescriptions for morality or, judgment or any of that kind of stuff. I think the real meat and potatoes of that story is the social justice and, the teaching against being a hypocrite. And I think there's some really good poetic stuff in there literature-wise that I think it should be emphasized about de-emphasizing the absurdities and the outrages of the clergy over the centuries.
I agree with you. And I feel like the responsibility of one of the responsibilities of people who consider themselves humanists, like myself, and you suggested perhaps yourself, is to try and help everyone find the best in their religious tradition. I am increasingly, as I do the work that I do, less interested in what people believe religiously and more how they treat other people. And if I can help them find the resources within their religious tradition, whatever it is, which speak to humane and decent treatment of other people, then that's where I'm going to focus most of my efforts. I will say that I think it's an important point for us as an atheist community, and since we're sitting in the atheist community of Austin, it's important to note that we have to do that too. Like there's been plenty of bad treatment of people within the atheist community, including by some of the people that you mentioned. And we have to hold our own community to high standards of behavior to ensure that they're not sending out, demeaning and ridiculous tweets or acting outrageously at conferences and things like that. So I think that searching for that kind of ethical heart of religious traditions and of our own atheistic or non-theistic tradition is super important, and I totally agree with you on that.
Very good.
That's beautiful, man.
Dinner there at Star of India.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking
pretty
forward to
soon.
it.
We've got a few more minutes.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm like ready to eat the spaghetti monster right now. It's going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
thank
really.
you.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you for calling.